This movie is not about a man looking for a job. This movie is about AI. The problem is not that plot is happening in our world. The question is how we deal with it. I'm Jacob Krueger, and this is the Write Your Screenplay Podcast. This episode, we are going to be talking about Park Chan-wook's fabulous new film, No Other Choice. We're going to be talking about the difference between plot and structure. Plot, at the end of the day, is boring. If you go read the plot of the greatest movies ever made, go read the summary of The Godfather, and you'll notice that when it's abstracted down to plot, it seems boring. Whereas structure can feel riveting. And structure can make us care about sometimes the most unlikely characters. In this case, we're literally watching a guy killing off innocent people so he can get a job. And the reason we care about him is not the plot. It's the structure, and I'm going to show you how that works. I'll let you know before we get to the really big spoilers, but I am going to talk about the plot. There's a wonderful moment right before the death of Yu Bumo, who is the first person to actually die in No Other Choice. And ironically, Yu Bumo does not die by the hand of Yu Man-soo, the main character, despite Man-soo's plan to kill him as a competitor who he must take out in order to get his chance at a new job. Yu Bumo actually dies at the hands of his wife. And shortly before murdering him, his wife says this incredible line. And this is me paraphrasing from memory, so hopefully I'm getting it perfect. She says, "Losing your job isn't the problem. The way you deal with it is the problem." We have been watching her deal with the problem of her husband from the very first scene where he's introduced. He's basically introduced with a giant fart. And what we find out is that he has been laid off from his job and he has basically given up all meaning in his life. Because like every other male character in No Other Choice, Yu Bumo's entire view of who he is connected to his work. His entire identity is connected to his work. And it's a really interesting choice because his work is at a paper factory. In fact, all of these characters, all of these male characters, all work at paper factories. They're paper guys. Their dream is to win the Pulp Man of the Year award. These are people who take working at a paper manufacturer the way that we take writing a screenplay. And what we're going to watch over the course of No Other Choice is we're going to watch all of these characters. Not just Yu Man-soo, the main character who loses his job and with it loses all meaning. And we're going to see what happens when the value of your life grows entirely from these toxic ideas about the purpose of your job. See, the line that Yu Bumo's wife delivers is not just for Yu Bumo. It is for every character in this piece. It is actually the theme. Because all of these men, with the exception of the very last murderer who actually has a job, all of these have lost their jobs. And of all of them, there is only one who's dealing with it in any kind of reasonable way. The second to last murderer who is working at a shoe shop and making the best of a bad situation. He's the only character who's dealing with this in any way related to practicality or humbleness or what's actually going on in his world. But our main character, when we meet him at the beginning of this film, we meet a man who literally has it all. He has a great job. He has the most amazing wife, Lee Mi-ri. He has two wonderful kids who he loves, one of whom is on the spectrum in some way, but has a gift. His little girl has a gift for playing the cello. He has two beautiful kids, 2 beautiful dogs, a beautiful home. He's purchased and restored the family home where he grew up, which was lost when his father lost his pig farm. And we'll find out later committed suicide because of it. So this is about toxic masculinity and the idea of connecting your job to the meaning of your life. And at the center of it is this one line that actually ripples through all of these stories. The problem is not that you lost your job. The way you deal with it is the problem. In fact, with this brilliant thematic line, this character and, of course, these brilliant writers are illustrating to you the difference between plot and structure. The plot of your movie is not the problem. And we're so focused on plot, we think plot is the problem. But the plot of your movie is not the problem. How you deal with it is the problem. And similarly for your characters, the plot of the movie is not the problem, and it's also not the solution. The way they deal with it is the problem, and it's also the solution. In other words, plot is just the crap that happens to happen. Whether your character loses their job, loses their wife, loses their family, whether your character wins the lottery, wins a new car, gets their dream job, right? Just the crap that happens to happen in your movie, your TV show, or in your life. Structure is the choices the characters make in relation to the plot. It's how they deal with it. And what we're actually watching when we watch the movie is not the plot. Plots are interchangeable. They're not that important. What's exciting about No Other Place is not watching this man kill a bunch of people. We've seen a million movies that do that. What's exciting about this piece is watching the problematic ways that he deals with it. In fact, this is what a character's change is. A character's change is watching the problematic ways that they deal with the plot that happens to happen in their lives. In a TV show, we often watch them repeat the same problematic choices again and again in bigger and bigger ways. In a feature film, almost always we watch the character make the same mistakes again and again. We watch them deal with it in all the wrong ways until finally something new happens. But every once in a while, you have a different kind of movie like No Other Place. So the concept I want you to keep in your head is that plot and structure are different. Plot is the crap that happens to happen, and pretty much almost anything you make up will work as long as you are attacking the character where they live. Structure is the choices characters make in relation to what happens to happen. And structure is actually what we're connecting to in our scripts. Because here's the thing. Most of your audience is never going to go kill a bunch of people, like Yu Man-soo in this movie. Most of your audience is never going to have the experience of the characters that you are writing in most genre movies. It's the choices that your character is making in relation to it that allow them to go like, oh my God, I get it. I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like to feel like your whole identity is caught up in this one thing. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important to look for the love. Because even when characters are doing really terrible things, when you look for the love, it allows you to get underneath the character. And that's one of the things that's just so wonderful about this character. Because how does he actually deal with the stuff that happens to happen? All of these characters deal with it in different ways, but the main character, Yu Man-soo, how does he deal with losing his job? Well, he kind of deals with it like Hamlet. In fact, the structure of No Other Choice is kind of reminiscent of Hamlet. So at the beginning of Hamlet, Hamlet gets charged by his father's ghost. Hey, dude. Hey, son. I love you, man. But your uncle, he killed me. I know you love him. I know you're kind of a spoiled prince and you're not used to like taking revenge and doing shit. You're more of a thinker, dude. But your uncle killed me and now he's sleeping with your mom. And like, you're the only one who can do anything about this, dude. And what's really interesting about Hamlet is Hamlet doesn't rush out to do something. What Hamlet does is he kind of thinks about it. He comes up with a plan. He kind of does it. He kind of doesn't do it. He hesitates. It takes him time to decide. He wrestles with it. Right? And that's part of what's so beautiful about this Yu Man-su character and what allows us to connect with him and care about him. And I'm not saying that's the only way to do it. Dexter does a brilliant job of this with a different kind of character, a sociopath who's trying to live the code that his father taught him. And that also is really beautiful, but you can see that's also connected to beauty. Yes, Dexter happens to be a sociopath. But what's beautiful is watching him try to live up to the code that his father gave him. And what's beautiful is watching him try to feel and love and care like other people can. Trying to overcome his sociopathy. That's what we're watching when we're watching the show Dexter. In this show, the main character is not a sociopath. At least as far as I can tell. In this project, Yu Man-su is a lot more like us. He's a dude who is, in the Buddhist sense, attached to his job. Meaning he can no longer differentiate between who he is and what his role is. He can no longer see the value of himself outside of his Pulp Man of the Year award. And his company's been bought by an American company. And when we first meet him, we see the love in him. They're going to lay off a bunch of his people, and he is practicing a speech that he is going to make to protect these people. He's not just going to fire these people. He's going to defend them. He has no other choice. He must defend them. These are the people he's worked with for the last 20 years. So we start off and we meet a beautiful man, right? A man who has love underneath him. This is his starting point, and we're going to move that character to murder. He goes to give his speech, and the American dude who's bought the company doesn't even listen to the speech. He doesn't even get to give the speech he's been practicing. The guy basically drives off in the middle of what he's saying. And then the next thing you know, he's fired along with all the other dudes. So his plan to protect these people did not work. And like any normal human being, how does he deal with it? Well, he's real sad about it, but he starts applying for jobs. But he's not getting any jobs. Because despite being eminently qualified, there are other people who are also out of work, and some of them are even more qualified than him. And now all the things that he actually cares about are starting to get attacked. He's at risk of losing his house, this precious, precious possession. This house that his father lost, that he repurchased, rebuilt. His precious greenhouse that he built attached to the house where he practices his bonsai. His art form. We meet a man at the beginning who literally hugs his family and says, "I have it all." So we know he's going to fall. Now he's going to lose his house. Despite all of his success in his career, he's working at a warehouse. And he ends up losing that job because he has to leave for a job interview. And that job interview doesn't even work out. And now he's going to lose his house. And his wife, who, unlike him, is dealing with things in a practical, real way. She's such a wonderful character. She takes control. We're going to make some changes around here. And she starts dealing with all the practicality. She goes and gets a job. We're going to cut back this spending. We're going to cancel Netflix. The only thing that she's not going to cancel is her daughter's cello lessons. Because even though her daughter will not play a single song for her or for her husband, even though they only hear her play scales, this is the one thing her daughter has, the one gift her daughter has that may someday lead to her daughter being independent. Because her daughter has some kind of gift for this, even though it's a gift that they can't see. And that's the one thing they will not compromise on. So you can see the mother's love, the dad's love. But of course, Lee Marie, his wife, does insist we are going to have to sell the house. Because if we don't sell the house, they are going to take it from us anyway. What's really interesting, as you can see, is that Yu Man-soo is backed into a corner where he feels he has no other choice. He cannot sell the house. It's his dad's house. It's his identity. He cannot let this happen to his family. And to make it even harder, his daughter, the teacher comes and tells them, hey, I can't teach your daughter anymore. Not because she's not good enough, but because she's too good. She's too gifted. She needs a world-class teacher who's going to be much more expensive. And she needs a $50,000 cello. And you want her to be independent, right? And it's this love that drives our Hamlet character towards murder. It's not ugliness. It's not darkness. The problem is not the plot. The problem is the way the character is dealing with it. Unlike his practical, pragmatic wife who's dealing with their new reality. This is a character who is trying to hold on to things as if the world weren't changing. And in the process is going to lose everything that was once his morality. What's also really interesting about this is as he starts to stalk his kills, very carefully, choosing only the people who are true competitors with him, who have better qualifications than he does. He's going to start to see himself in all of them because they are also men who feel like they have no other choice. They are also men for whom the real problem is not that they lost their job. The real problem is their toxic masculinity. The real problem is the way they're dealing with it. He's going to start to take on their problems as if they were his problems. In fact, Yu Gumo, who we talked about earlier, whose wife has that great line, whose wife will ultimately end up murdering him. One of the things that Yu Man-soo, our main character, oversees is that his wife is having an affair. And he takes that information and he starts to wonder, is my wife having an affair? So he starts to, his perfect, incredible wife, right? He starts to take the ideas that he's seeing in other people's lives and he starts to apply them and attach to them and act as if they were true in his own. So this is a man who at the center of it is not dealing with reality, who believes that there is no other choice and who's building a tighter and tighter vice for himself as he starts to believe that maybe the reality of all these other men is also a reflection of his own reality. So you can see the hook of that, right? At the center of it is a guy who's trying to protect his home, his daughter, his family. The problem is not the desire. The problem is the way he's dealing with it. The first attempt at murder, he plans to kill the man whose job he wants. That's going to be his first step. And I want to point out this scene because it's one of the truly brilliant examples of a concept I talk about all the time called isolating visual moments of action. But it's also a great opportunity to kind of see the Hamlet of it all. So he's tracking the man, and because it's a comedy, it's done in a very funny way. He's not great at this. And his plan to kill the man, he stands up above him, and he's got a flower pot. And this is a man, Yuman-su, who loves gardening. So he's taking he loves the bonsai trees, right? But there's a man who loves plants, who loves gardening, whose passion is getting turned and twisted into an object of violence. Because he believes he has no other choice. And we watch him wrestle with it. Well, first he picks up the first plant, and then he sets it down, and we're like, yeah, he can't quite do it. But then he picks up a bigger plant, and he can't quite do it. And then he picks up an even bigger plant, and this is just such a brilliant moment. The water from the plant drips down, this disgusting water drips down all over his body and face. And I want to point out this moment, because this is one of those moments that elevates you as a writer if you can see with this level of specificity, right? Because often as a writer, we think the job of the scene is to move the plot forward, right? In this case, moving the plot forward is, does he kill the guy or does he not kill the guy? What plan does he come up with next? And it's hard sometimes to stop and realize, no, the job of the scene is to be the scene. The job of the scene is not to move the plot forward. That's just something that's going to happen to do. But what's going to make us fall in love with the scene is the specificity of the scene, is watching it closely in your mind's eye, letting each moment really matter. Of sitting with that pot and realizing pots have water in them, right? Pots are not dry, right? Sitting in that moment and watching this thematic moment where he's literally covered with the filth of what he's about to do, where this object that he loves, the plant, even it's not his plant, but this metaphor for these objects that he loves, almost becomes this object of ugliness. And yeah, the guy he's trying to kill seems like a real jerk, but he's also an innocent man. He's not deserving of murder. And our Hamlet character, just like the Hamlet in Hamlet, fails to go through with the murder. Right? There's something about that moment that stops him. But also there's a woman who notices him, who stops him. And we get this great moment where instead of murdering the guy with the plant, it's a pepper plant. He buys the plant from the woman who notices him, and he takes it home. And this becomes the next step in his plan, right? Which is he realizes even if he kills this guy, there are better candidates out there. He's got to figure out who the better candidates are before he takes this guy out. And this is actually the plot of the film. The plot of the film is extremely simple. He's going to create a fake company called Pepper Paper. He's going to get all the resumes from all the out-of-work dudes. He's going to figure out which out-of-work dudes are better than he is. Then he's going to take them out. And then he's going to kill the guy. And he'll be the best applicant. And that is his goal, right? And it's an ugly freaking goal. And we're actually dealing with the reality for him of how ugly and hard this is. Because he's not Dexter. He's a normal human being pushed to the extreme, feeling like he has no other choice, right? And this, again, this is what you're doing as you build your structure. In a way, almost every movie could be called No Other Choice, because this is your job with your character. You want to drive them to a place where they feel like they have no other choice, but make a choice that is going to have a huge impact on them, positive or negative. Drive them to a place where they believe, where their belief systems about the world, the way their particular universe is put together, better said, the fragmented, broken, and confused way with which their reality is put together. You want to push them to the place where they're going to make the worst decision. But that decision is going to feel inevitable because for them, it feels like there's no other choice. You're going to move them through that vice of their own making to see what exists on the other side for them. You're going to change them. In this case, we're going to take this sweet guy and we're going to move him. And at this point, we've moved him all the way to Hamlet, except a slightly darker version of Hamlet because it's not like nice daddy ghost that tells him to do it. And it's not evil Claudius, the uncle that he's trying to kill. It's the innocents. But of course, that's what happens to Hamlet too. Who ends up actually dying, right? Ophelia, Laertes, right? All these people that he actually cares about are the ones who actually, Polonius, these are the people who actually end up dying. Yes, he happens to get the bad guy at the end, but even Gertrude dies, right? This is what happens when you pursue the wrong thing because you feel like you have no other choice. And just like Hamlet, we're going to watch this character struggle with it. So we watch him struggle with this first murder. Then we watch him go to pull off the second murder, which also goes badly. He gets bit by a snake. All kinds of things go wrong. That goes all wrong. And then the wife ends up in the middle of the melee, pulling off the murder in a fit of passion for him with his own gun. So even the second murder, he certainly instigated it, and it would not have happened if it wasn't for him. And everything's gone wrong, and he's barely escaped with his life. And he's driven a woman from a place of frustration with her husband to a place of murder. But we're moving the character. In fact, the first actual murder that he pulls off is potentially the ugliest of them. Because the man that he actually will murder seems to be a really kind man. This man also has no other choice, but he's dealing with it much more like Limiri is dealing with it, much more like the main character's wife is dealing with it, right? He's dealing with it practically. Yes, he may have been a great paperman at one point, but now he's doing what's necessary. He's working at a shoe store, and he's working real hard, and people aren't being nice to him. And he thinks that Yu Man-su is going to buy some shoes for him. In fact, Yu Man-su says he's going to buy the shoes for his daughter, right? Bringing back that love, right? Even in this darkness. Because it is that love for this daughter that's driving all of this. And that moment, and I'm going to spoil some stuff, but that moment where he executes that man, where he shoots him, is brutal. Because Yubuma, right, is a farting, lazy, grumpy, miserable dude who's driven his wife to another man's arms and who is a hard dude to deal with and who's quite frankly almost as messed up in his own way as our main character. But this man is humble, has a child that he loves. This man is someone we can see ourselves in. And so we get this brutal murder at the center of it where we can really feel our main character lose his soul. He sticks that man that he's killed in the trunk of his car. Everything goes wrong because everything has to go. He's about to cut up the body to dispose of it, totally Dexter style, in the greenhouse, of course. But what he ends up doing instead, and again, this is that theme, right? It's just too much. He can't cut it up. He's not Dexter. It's too disgusting. What he doesn't know is his son is watching through the top of the greenhouse. His son is seeing this. And to make it more complicated, more complex, his son's going on his own journey, trying to deal with the poverty. He's getting involved in some petty theft with his friend, right? Trying to rip off his friend's dad's store so they can resell some iPhones. Why? Again, from love. He wants to help his mom. And he's also, by the way, smoking, which mom would be really upset about. And there's this really cool thing. So throughout this, we're finding out that Yu Man-su is an addict, that he kicked alcoholism. And in fact, almost all of these men are addicts. Almost all of them are alcoholics. He kicked alcoholism. And one of the really cool things we watch is he does not violate that. That's the one thing, no matter what's going on, he keeps himself clean, but he does start smoking again. And there's this really cool complicit moment where he gives his son back the pack of cigarettes and he says, I didn't tell your mom. So they have this weird complicity where dad has hidden the kid's secret. That is a tiny little mirror for what must have happened way back when with this main character and his father, right? Fathers passing down their little secrets to their kids and unwittingly grooming them in their own image. So his son's up on the roof smoking a cigarette, and he sees his father's secret, which is horrifying. He sees his father with a chainsaw about to cut up a dead body. But dad ends up not using the chainsaw. He just can't bring himself to do it. What he does instead is he uses the wire that he uses for his bonsai trees. And he binds the body up into a ball. And it's this shockingly beautiful image. And I want to show you this again. This is just like that image with the plant earlier, right? Where once again, the object of what this man loves has been turned into this image of horror, right? This movie is about what happens when love gets turned into ugliness and horror because the character feels they have no other choice. I want to take a moment to talk to you about one of our most exciting new classes, The Craft with Stephen Bagatorian. This class began when Steve came to me and basically said, hey, Jake, our students aren't reading enough scripts. And even when they are reading scripts, they're not always reading the right scripts. Sometimes they're reading Casablanca and they're trying to learn how to write a modern screenplay. Or they're reading a script that does one thing really well, but not understanding that they're also learning bad habits along the way. So what Steve is doing in The Craft is he is going to be breaking down 2 different extraordinary screenplays every single month. So you'll meet twice a month for as long as you want to stay in the class. And every session, you'll be breaking down a different screenplay. Unlike my Write Your Screenplay class or my master class, where we're breaking down screenplays for structure, in this class, you're going to be breaking them down for craft. In each session, you're going to be learning a different craft technique mined from these master screenplays. And then you're going to be practicing writing exercises and demos and getting feedback on how you're doing that work so you can get those strategies into your bones. So it's an extraordinary program. We're really excited about it. You can join at any time. There's no minimum commitment. So if you want to learn more about that, you can find it on my website, writeyourscreenplay.com. So we get this unbelievable image of this bound up body that he ends up burying in the ground and planting a tree over, which is in fact what he's doing throughout this whole movie. He's trying to bury a body in the ground so he can build a beautiful tree. Earlier in the movie, Yu Guma's wife is complaining that their tree is infested. Their pear tree, I believe, is infested and dying. And how can Yu Guma do nothing about it? And here's our main character, Yu Man-soo, trying to build something beautiful out of something ugly because he feels like he has no other choice. So he buries the body and plants a tree over it. And then he goes off to pull off his final crime, his final murder. He's going to kill the guy who's got the job he wants because now all of the top competitors are out of his way. He's going to get that job. But again, the scene is not about advancing the plot. It's not about what happens. It's about how the character deals with it. And again, the main character we're watching is basically Hamlet. So what we're going to watch is we're going to watch him connect with this guy. They kind of bond. And it even seems like it's not certain, but the guy might even talk to his boss and see if he can get our main character a job. Because the truth is, the job is eating this guy alive. He's lost his wife over this job. He bought this beautiful house with the money from this job, thinking he was going to barbecue outside every day, and he hasn't had a single barbecue. His first barbecue is while getting drunk with Yu Man-soo, the guy who's planning to kill him. He's lost everything for this job that he's trying to hold on to, and he doesn't have any time for anything. And it looks like maybe he might recommend Yu Man-soo for the job, but then again, he's very, very, very drunk. It's possible he won't. And Yu Man-soo has his Hamlet moment, where he basically says, I don't want to kill this guy. But if I don't do it, then all the other murders will be for nothing. I've already done all these terrible things. I have no choice but do this last one. So here's this guy who lost his job fighting to do the right thing, who's now doing the wrong thing, the most wrong thing, to justify the other wrong things that he's done. To try to build something beautiful out of something ugly. Because he feels, like all the characters, like he has no other choice. Now, while this is all going on, we've also seen his relationship with his wife devolve. Because he starts to suspect her of cheating, and she's got this job with this dentist who clearly likes her. But he is the one messing up his relationship, because he's off interviewing, but really killing people, while she's getting closer and closer with this dentist. And we find out at the very beginning that the first thing he does is he buys her this pair of dancing. She loves dancing. And there's this big dance that everything's supposed to be culminating to. But while she's out at the dance, he's off killing somebody. And he shows up late for the dance, and it looks like she is with this dentist. She's not. But having seen the infidelity of Yu Guman's wife, he thinks maybe this is happening to him too. He starts to suspect. And his wife is no dummy. She can see bad things happening. In fact, there's this incredible moment where mom basically goes, why are both of the men in my house hiding something from me? Again, this is me paraphrasing. And she confronts her son because she knows he's hiding something, and he tells her about the dead body. And Lee Mi-ri, who's a practical woman, and she knows her husband, and she's smart, and she deals with reality. And she knows what he's likely to have done, and she knows how he's likely disposed of this body, and she goes and finds that tree. And she digs up that tree. And she sees. And this is what's so incredible, because we are waiting for her to leave her husband. We are waiting for her to set down her feet. We are waiting for her to put her foot down. But she doesn't. This woman who we've seen as practical moves to this place of not dealing with reality because she feels like she has no other choice. She lies to her son. So the woman moves from practicality and dealing with the truth to reinforcing the lie. She tells her son that her husband buried a pig that he missaw. She protects her son from the truth of who his father has become. And of course, the pig that she's making up for him is symbolic, because his father was a pig farmer who had to kill all of his pigs because he had no other choice, because they were sick, who lost his farm, who started all of this psychology rolling that's built up to this point in this man who wants to be good, who's driven by love. Meanwhile, Yu Man-soo, in order to pull off his final murder, ends up in a situation where he has to drink. He's been secretly pouring out his shots while the man he's trying to kill is getting drunker and drunker and drunker. But then the man gets a brilliant idea to do a shot bombed into a beer, and there's no way for him to hide it. And this man who has held on to this one thing loses even that. This man who feels like he has no other choice, who feels like he has to provide, who feels like he's in it on his own, when in fact his wife is actually there for him throughout this. In fact, there's a wonderful moment where she says to him in the subtext, like, if you're doing something terrible, I'm in it with you. But he can't see that. And he doesn't really want to kill this guy, but he kind of does it anyway. Because otherwise all the other terrible things he has done will mean nothing. And it's with that we send him back to his wife. And we see that although she's still there for him, something has been lost between these two forever. And as this movie culminates, all of these different elements, now I'm really going to spoil it because I'm going to give away this beautiful, powerful ending. Because Park Chan-wook is holding in his back pocket the real theme, where you don't even know this piece is going because you feel like you've been watching this comedy thriller, but it's so grounded because it's driven by these characters who have real love underneath them. That for all their flaws and the terrible things they're doing are driven by love, right? This man who wants his daughter to have her freaking cello and her independence, who wants to protect his family, who feels like there's no other choice, in a world of people who feel like there's no other choice, of a world of people living compromised lives because they believe there is no other choice, and because they don't want to deal with the fact that their reality is shifting, and that their choices and their lifestyles may need to shift with them. All of this culminates with Mom hearing for the first time her daughter play the cello. And it's so freaking beautiful. It's so freaking beautiful that even for all our moral outrage at what's happened, a part of us is going, was it all worth it? Just that part. Because this little girl has a gift that her father's horrific actions has given her. And their home is saved. But the little girl notes that the tree is infested. It's being eaten by ladybugs. So we have this thing, right, of trying to make something beautiful out of something ugly. And we have the beauty of what she's playing, underscoring the ugliness of how it's been built. And finally, Yu Man-soo gets his job. And this is where that final card gets laid down on the table. Yu Man-soo gets his job. But his job will not be the job he's always had. He will not be supervising people. Because this movie is not about a man looking for a job. This movie is about AI. This movie is about what's happening for all of us. And what's potentially going to happen in our world. The company is now going 100% AI. They're going to run lights out, meaning the AI robots don't even need the lights turned on. They just need one guy. Our main character. In fact, they tell him, you're not going to be beating the paper rolls with your stick anymore, which is one of the things we see him doing early on. Is one of the things he takes pride on, beating the paper rolls. It's I believe, a way of testing them. So we're watching this man who starts the movie doing the old thing around which he has such pride. Trying to fight for the lives and the careers of the people around him. And he's won. He's gotten the thing he fought for the whole movie. But he is basically the one guy who survives. And even there, his job is not his job. His job is simply to be the one guy in a world of automation. Throughout this piece, there's been a running gag, a promo piece that the man he'll eventually kill has made, which is basically talking about how paper doesn't destroy the environment. Paper renews the environment. We're not killing trees, we're replanting trees. And so juxtaposed with all of this, we're going to end on these incredibly disturbing image of these automated machines chopping up the trees. And we realize that the trees are the people. The trees are us. And that we're moving towards this place because everybody, just like our main character, wants to protect their family, wants to protect their livelihood, wants to protect their identity, wants to believe there is no other choice, or truly does believe there is no other choice. And in this way, we're all complicit. Because the problem, as Yuba Mo's wife points out, whose name I wish I knew, as she points out, is not that you lost your job. The problem is how you deal with it. The problem is not that plot is happening in our world. The problem, or the question, is how we deal with it. This film, in a lot of ways, is the first film to seriously deal with the question of AI. And it deals with it in a shocking and disturbing way. It deals with it through theme. But it's also asking us a profound question, which is, like the main character, there are forces happening in our world that are terrifying, that are beyond our control. And maybe that also is just plot. Maybe the real problem or the real answer is how you deal with it. So I hope you've enjoyed this podcast and it's helping your writing. If you'd like to learn more, come study with us. We have our free Thursday night Writes class every Thursday night. We have the craft coming up on March 11th, and we have all kinds of other programs, including our one-on-one mentorship program that will pair you with a professional writer who will mentor you through your whole career at the tiniest fraction of the cost of grad school. Come check it out, and happy writing.